another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess here, back with another AFL review. I know it's late, ladies and gentlemen, but scheduling issues and life sometimes happens. So this may be coming out just only hours from the start of round 22. We are going to cover round 21 in all its insanity. And joining me today, thank you so much, Chris from the Bevy of Bloods. Chris, thank you for joining me, sir.
Easy, Donnie, mate. It's great to be back. I always enjoy it, and it's always good to be chatting, mate. So let's get into it, eh?
Well, I have to admit this on the mic. You were saving my bacon. All of the people that I usually was going to have on the podcast could not make it. You are a lifesaver. So I genuinely appreciate you having you on the podcast. So really quick, let's jump to it before we go into the reviews. Your thoughts on round 21. Because again, this is mental. How many games were interesting, and especially the massive upset during the round.
Yeah, look, football's fun. Like the AFL competition is amazing. Like it has been the last couple of years, and it only seems to be getting closer. And I know we're all at the beginning. Things change at the beginning of the season. We're like, oh yeah, there's a clear 1-2. St Kilda is killing everyone. Well, they're dropping like a stone, like I said they would. And there's all these teams that everyone's all excited about, and they're the ones that are dropping off to the middle eight. So now the middle eight is the one that are dangerous, right? So it's so interesting. There's talk about a wild card round. There's no need for that. The last 4 weeks of the football season is basically the wild card round the last few years. Keep it the way it is. I love the competition. I know my Swans are fighting for a spot. It's super exciting. I'm losing sleep, but it is what it is, mate. I love football. It's great.
You think you're losing sleep? Imagine me, because the Swans keep getting primetime games,
Yeah.
so I'm waking up at 4 in the morning.
Yeah, you're in a bad spot there.
It's okay. It's okay because as I told some people, I said for some of the Swans fans, I feel sorry because they have to go to bed after some of these exciting games, which some of them can't. For me, at least, I can kind of enjoy my day because the game ends about 7 a.m. So it's kind of perfect. But it is
Yeah.
kind of one of those where it's like, okay, it's like I know I'm going to be sleep deprived a little bit during the summer because of these games. So but
Yeah.
we'll talk more Swans a little bit later. I know a couple of Swans, so I swear to try not to be too Swan centric. But let's jump into it. First game, Friday night footy. And I have to say, this surprised me, but didn't surprise me as the Donkeys smash the Tigers 126-71. Maybe it's just me, but ever since Dimma complained about Marvel Stadium, the Tigers just cannot
I
find the way to
love it.
play well at Marvel Stadium.
I love the fact that Richmond is terrible at Marvel. What a bunch of wusses. So these guys, they play at the MCG every single game. Every single game, basically, they're at the MCG. They have to go across the road. It's all of a few hundred meters in my eyes. I know it's more than that. Like, don't at me. It's not that far. Just go to the damn game. Your mates are playing. Like, just go. And they complain about it, whatever. So I'm glad that there's this curse on Marvel for the Tigers. That's what you get for complaining about having to go a few hundred meters when you've got fans from all around the country that never get to watch their team play. That, you've got team players, you've got big group of really passionate fans in WA that are coming all the way to Sydney this week for their round. Like the effort that people have to go to watch a game. If you're complaining about going, okay, that's on you. You deserve to get the curse. So the game was hilarious. The Doggies got off really strong at the beginning, and that was about the game. And I just don't. This is how boring the game got for me. It was so bad that I went, I'm going to go watch a movie. And I went up the road up to the Randwick Ritz and I watched Meg 2, which is a horrendous movie. Absolutely horrendous movie, but it was still a better showing than what I was watching there in that first 2 quarters. So look, the Doggies are strong. I don't know why no one puts time into Libba and Bontempelli, given they're like a 1-2 punch that is probably the most successful 1-2 punch going around at the moment. And Bont is going to win the Brownlow at this rate. So put some time into him, for God's sake. Like it looked lazy from the Tigers. It was just an ordinary game to watch, especially at the beginning. And then the Bulldogs just took the foot off the pedal and then just let them kind of slowly come back in. But the Doggies, man, they're strong, and the Tigers are hot and cold every week, as kind of, I guess, what you're going to get for the rest of the season from them. So what are they in, like 10th? No, sorry, they're probably in like 13th place or something
13th,
now.
yep.
13th. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, that's about where it stands. If you're going to be hot and cold like that in this competition, you're going to get that. So yeah, it was a pretty funny game. It was one of the few games this week that I got to watch the whole thing. I went back and watched the rest of it, and yeah, the Meg 2 with Jason Statham was a better showing. So that gives you a bit of an idea of what you're working with here.
Well, my apologies to my Richmond supporters. Again, this no,
Sorry.
it is fine. It is absolutely fine. But I agree with you. But then I almost kind of look at some of Richmond's outs. They had no Dylan Grimes, no Cochin. Again, Cochin can be a plus or a minus depending on how you see him. Dusty Martin again. I think his powers are starting to wane. I think some of the younger kids are starting to kind of take over that mantle of most dangerous player in the competition. And I agree with you. The fun with Bond though is that he can go forward. He does pose that threat of he's so tall that he can go forward and kind of becoming a marking situation. Now that I think the Western Bulldogs have kind of figured out their forward, but they have, I don't know. It's the doggies are an enigma to me. They can play games like this where they're absolutely fantastic. They seem absolutely unstoppable at times, and then there's times where it's like they take stupid pills and they can't remember how to do anything, and their defense kind of goes to absolute crap. So I'm not going to sit here and say the Dogs are a strong team. I think they ran into a weakened, vulnerable Tigers team on a deck that they hate to play on, and they absolutely showed why. They hate to play there because it really fit the doggy style for somewhere the Tigers. I don't know what it is. So it's frustrating to see a team with that much talent in the Tigers absolutely just not show up for 3.5 quarters. So it's just frustrating. It kind of thins the herd a little bit. I think honestly they're 6 points back now with 3 games to play. I think they're out of it, which some people with mathematically they're still in it because there's still 12 points to go after this round. But I think six is going to be difficult to get in 3 weeks when everybody is in this quagmire from fifth.
Yeah. Everyone's playing each other. It's going to be near impossible to get. Yeah. Look, I think the very first goal came off Caleb Daniels on a one-on-one, and he literally outmuscled his defender. You can't be doing that with the smallest guy in the league. Like, you can't let that happen to you. I think that was just a premise of things to come. When I saw that, I'm just like, oh, come on. And that was a minute into the game. And I was like, oh, geez. And then this exploded from there. And I was like, all right, fine. I'm going to go watch Jason Statham take his shirt off. I can't wait.
I think we'll jump off of that one. No offense, again, the Meg 2 fans, if you're listening, we apologize for that. So now we jump to the game that I mean, literally, I remember watching this and going, am I serious? Is this seriously happening? The West Coast Eagles only fall to the Essendon Bombers by 1, but this was a point that if there weren't these 2 minutes left in the game when the Eagles had the lead, the Bombers were this close to dropping to the West Coast Eagles. I don't know whether I should be happy for them or look at them with disdain going, what are you doing?
I feel so bad for Bombers fans. Like, how do you stay a Bombers fan? Like, God bless you for doing so, because they give you nothing. They just you look at that game and be like, look, we just lost against the Swans in a game that we're pummeling back, and we were showing the strength of our mids and things, and there was some signs there, only to just scrape away with a win against clearly the worst team in the competition with an anchor. Like, it's weird. So I don't know. I didn't even bother with this game, right? I was just like, oh, it's going to be like a percentage booster. So it's probably going to be like, they're going to be like 40, 50, 60, 70 points up. Fine. I did. And then I was actually asleep on a bus on my way out to Homebush to watch the Giants Swans game. And then I woke up when the other fans woke me, and looked at my phone. I'm like, oh, you're kidding. That's what happened. Like, so anyway, it's a shock. I don't even know what to say about them other than they're lucky to have fans at this point. That's all I can fucking say, really.
Although Kyle Langford has been one of the great bright spots of this team, but they're unfortunately their injuries are just in the right places that it's really weakening a team that on their day again they don't have their best, they really don't have their best ruck. And Draper's been gone for so many weeks. Ridley's been out with injury, and I think this is the Bombers team that you can kind of see some things, but the lack of defense at times has leapt into their game from that wasn't there at the early part of the year when they were absolutely playing really well. So the Bombers, I think this offseason, they're really going to have to make sure that they tighten up the defensive structure because it has absolutely went to high water since probably round since as I think Coach Scott said since gather round, and I don't know why. And it's just this weird. They're them and St. Kilda are the two enigmas this year. Where it's like I don't know, are you good or were you lucky that you got a lot of teams that you were beatable early in the season and now you're kind of getting exposed for what you really are? And again, it is no offense. Sometimes it happens, but it is really one of those where them and St. Kilda are these enigmas. I don't, are you a good team or are you an average team that got a couple of
Mm.
wins you probably shouldn't have early in the year? So I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, Bombers survive. Eagles, they're gonna go through
Are they
quite the
showing
change.
something now? Do you think that I guess question for you out of notice, like, do you
Sure.
think that they are now starting to turn it around? That they're going to start to maybe be a little? Is there something in the waters over there at the Eagles that are going to actually start changing some of this now?
Well, yeah, they're starting to see it. Shuey's gonna retire. The man child, Shannon Hearn is going to retire. So the off season, I know there's going to be changes, and I'm interested to see. I mean, you and I had a nice had a quite the awesome discussion off mic. If you'd love to hear it, you can ask, and I'll give you kind of how it went down about the rumors of Barras coming to Sydney and what we would and wouldn't trade for him, which I thought was fantastic. So again, thank you for that. This is a West Coast team that honestly they paid for trying to stay in the Premiership window too many years. They need an influx of young talent to kind of spruce the place up. Are they going to get it in one season? I don't think so. Are they going to be? I think they're kind of running into this year is like you're getting teams that if you take them lightly, which I think some teams are, they can burn you because they do have some talent. They do have some skill. I think Bailey Williams, their ruck, is quite the battler. I think he's going to make sure that you have to battle. And if you have a ruck that's not going to do that, he's going to get on top. And they've got Tim Kelly. They've got some guys in the mids that can play well. They've got some forwards like Oscar Allen that can kick
Mm.
goals. On
Great
their
player. Yeah.
day, they can be dangerous. The issue
Mm.
is that if you get on to them and get them behind 20, 30 points, then sometimes they roll over. So
Mm.
that's just kind of the thing that I just don't know from game to game how they're going to react. So it'll be fascinating to see how it goes. I don't know. Are they gonna? They're gonna be one of those teams that if you take them lightly, they can burn you badly. Like so,
Mm.
I don't know.
They at the end of the day, they are in the AFL, and
Mhm,
granted, they're not good at the bottom of the ladder in the AFL. Having said that, they are still got AFL talents on that roster, and you mentioned
mhm,
a few names there. In particular, Tim Kelly, which I found out through Matt in our crew, is actually half Chilean, which is my background. So
mhm.
he's now the best player in the league in my eyes. Chi 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 le 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 viva Chile. But the best thing about the Bombers that exists, and I just want to point this out there, is that Herbertron. If no one out there that listens to this channel that hasn't looked up and watched a Herbertron video on YouTube, go do it. Pause this, go do that immediately. It's easily the best content of anything in AFL. And it's basically about a very jaded Essendon fan that basically lives and dies by each week and makes this incredible video that's backed up with like the premise of a movie. So it might be like a Top Gun theme one week, or it might be he'll pick a song like Final Countdown or something, and the whole premise of the movie. It feels like a movie. The whole premise of the video is based around that and how the game went, and it's brilliant. So Herbertron, go watch that if you want to get an insight, as far as I can tell, inside the mind of a Bombers fan. That's the guy to go watch. And I can understand the hurt and pain going over there because Bombers fans, you deserve a medal. Every one of you should get free membership next year for just sticking around. That's good stuff over there.
Yeah. I think there's some people would say North Melbourne and West Coast fans should be applauded for having to
I
go
don't
through
like
some of the
North
stuff.
Melbourne. But, yeah.
I know I've heard that story on why. So we'll jump to the next game over to the Adelaide Oval. The Adelaide Crows escape with an 18-point win over the Gold Coast Suns. And I don't know about you, Chris, but for me, I kind of kept track of this because these are the next two opponents for the Sydney Swans. So I definitely was keeping an eye on this. And again, I think the old Gold Coast Suns are starting to pop back in again. I think that kind of they're out of the finals. There's no way they're gonna make it. Are they gonna be this team that's kind of we'll show up again? No
Mm.
Tuke Miller, so maybe that kind of throws it off too, because he's kind of there inspiring after Squirrel Gate, which I don't want to get into because I think that whole discussion was just it went on way
Derail.
too it went on way too long. And I
Yeah.
just don't really want to discuss that. But Crowies again, when they're on and they can kick on goal, they're deadly dangerous. Tex Malonker is, as I heard somebody say, he's winding back the clock. I mean, he's become the timekeeper. He's winding back the clock back, playing really well. He's one of those guys in the LA Crows when the Swans play him that I'm interested to
Mm.
see who the matchup is and how that goes. But this is a Crows team again. They've went through so many injuries in the back line, yet they found a group that can kind of put together. We'll have to see how they respond as the weeks go on. But this was an interesting game that had me very intrigued. But again, how do we see it? Because again, both teams have went through injuries, had some missing players. Fascinating one. Your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I genuinely think that the only reason Adelaide only won because of that fast start at the beginning. Okay, so I think they got up to 30 something points
Mm-hmm.
or 29 points about, and they ended up winning by 28. So like it was that first quarter that did it, and I just felt that this was purely a game on the home ground advantage. And I think the Suns haven't won a game there in 11 games that they played there at Adelaide Oval. So I just don't see. I didn't see anything out of this game that made me super excited about the Crows and felt that they were significantly stronger over um, the Suns. So I maintain the Suns are very, very, very good. Um, they weren't efficient with their usage. They didn't have enough of the ball as much as they wanted to. They have some absolute guns in that team, especially in the contested ball, that they just weren't utilizing as much. But when they did have the ball, they were doing great things with it. They had way less of the ball. I think. Let me have a quick look. It was, yeah. So they were like negative 60 something, like almost 70 disposals less for the game. But they still managed to keep the game on its even keel up until the end, outside of that first quarter. So I think that the Suns are going to do well. They're going to start hurting some teams. It's a very scary side to play this weekend for the Swans. And in particular, I kind of feel that next year they're basically going to be walking into finals. Is going to be hoo-ha because it's going to be apparently Dimon that took them there, despite the fact that that team has been built for some time, got some structure, put together well, got some great players in King, Lukosius up forward, got some amazing mids, Anderson, Rao, Took Miller, incredible players. And they're going to go further and go pretty long. And it's all going to be seen like it was Dimmer's brilliance. This team has got credible players. They've got time
Can,
to come
can I
on.
can I
So,
stop you there real quick, Chris?
please, please help me.
I've said it in a previous podcast. I don't understand Dimma excitement. I don't. And the reason I
I
say
don't
that
get
is
it either. No.
look at the Gold Coast Suns list. Tell me how they're like Richmond. They're not. And if
Yeah.
Dimma brings Richmond's pressure to Gold Coast, it is going to fail and fail spectacularly because he doesn't have the pressure forwards to play the game he wants. So unless
Mm.
Dimma's going to change his style, I love all these people that are like, well, if Dimma goes up there and does this, what's going to happen if Dimma bombs? What's going to happen
Mm.
if Dimma doesn't do any better than Stewie do? Somebody explain that to me because every single person that talks about Dimma never brings that topic in. They only talk about how successful he'll be. They will never, ever, ever, ever bring up the topic of what if he fails?
I don't think he can. And this is the reason why I suggest this. The team on paper is too good. And I know
Are
that
they?
coaching,
Stewie
I
Stewie
think,
Do Stewie Doos had the same team, and I think structurally had a better system that fit the guys that he had.
yeah, but like they've been progressively getting a little better, and I think for sure at this point, like the team that they have in front of them, and with like, don't get me wrong, Dimmer is a good. The guy is a genuinely good coach. He has a style that I can appreciate where you're coming from. Absolutely, is his style going to fit here, or they have to find players that make it fit? Do they have a farm system of players that can maybe plug into make his style fit, and maybe he's
Mhm.
just going to have to adjust? But either way, they've got some pretty sweet players in that team. And I just don't see if you even remotely coach well, that team is in top 10 guarantee, and then it's just a couple of extra places to get into those finals.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally am pretty warm about them. The Crows, I feel, we've spoken a lot about Gold Coast. They didn't win the game, so let's I guess we should move on to the Crows. But yeah, look, the Crows are the grand, and they've got some good players there. I still absolutely question their defense by a billion ways, and I think we said that in the first podcast that we did together in round like 5 or so.
Mm-hmm.
So it is what it is, but I think they've got a few pieces they're going to need to plug in, and I maintain that they didn't necessarily win in any strong particular fashion. They just were the team to get off hot, and then became an arm wrestle after that with two decent teams with some good young players. And Gold Coast just didn't take their chances and didn't contest hard enough, I think, is where it would all lost anyway.
Yeah, no, I've seen that before. Completely agree with you. If I understand the hard work factor and the you may draw more free agents up there. I don't like the group that he's got. I don't think it's going to be that easy to, if he wants to do the system that he ran at Richmond. I just don't think he's got the horses. And are they going to give him 3 years to get the horses? That's more of my thing.
I heard
That's
like,
more
so
of my
5
thing.
years, right? It's lazy. I would suggest that if I was a fan of Gold Coast and I heard that they were going after Dimmer, who just left a club that he's been very successful at because he just had enough. In his own words, the passion was not there anymore. Forward 6 months later and a couple of trips to Italy. Oh, you know what? I'm pumped. Let's go. Like it's such a lazy approach from a board and management position to just go after the only coach that's any decent and just presume they're going to come in and be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So that's me. I hate the idea of it, but I can also understand why some Gold Coast fans would be really excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's to me, it's just a lazy approach to things.
I agree, completely agree. Absolutely, you will not hear any argument with me on that. I think that I think they threw the baby out with the bathwater. I understand that we want to be in finals contention. I understand that, but you are in a very difficult situation in a place that is hard to attract marquee free agents. You get free agents, but most of the time you get fringe guys that are just looking for a chance to play. And sometimes that they're not going to have a super amount of talent. You got to draft your talent. And I think the draft talent is starting to work together. I'm just interested. Everybody's like, well, look at this list. Look at this list that Dimmer's going to have. I'm like, yeah, but now that Stewie Doo's gone and most of these guys signed thinking Stewie Doo was going to be the coach, how many of them are now going to want to go, hey, I want out?
That's a good point.
That's the other thing too. So it's like, again, I understand both sides. I understand you and I completely agree with you. I think Dimmer Hardwick brings a name, but I think a lot of people are giving him accolades in this situation of what he can do without seeing what he can do. And that's kind of how I approach that. So again, we'll get off that topic. We got to go to this next one because this one blew my mind. Hawthorn 105, Collingwood 73, a 32-point win by the Hawks. OMG, this blew my mind. And I've been saying it all season. I think Collingwood is one of those teams that they're going to be great in the home and away. But I don't like their style in finals because I think it doesn't match what finals does because finals changes everything.
I could not agree more. I think it's let's talk about their energy. Like Collingwood up until the last couple of weeks, let's say this week, because even last week was a all right game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm referring to the Carlton game, so just make it clear. They've been an incredibly exciting team to watch, and I hate saying that, right? But with Eddie Maguire gone, all of a sudden I'm okay with that. So they are such an interesting play. They are amazing. They are fast. They are nasty. They go off. They go forward. They don't stop. It's incredible. Love it. Great personalities in that team. The energy's gone. Like the energy is dissipating. They are losing out on side bottom. You lost Dacos. Darcy Moore's not playing well. This is all going forward, but like the energy of that team has slowly dissipated, and we knew it couldn't keep up forever. And I think where we are now is just watching them get through a game with the players that they have without that intensity that they built and driven themselves. Even McRae, the coach himself, said, look, I think he mentioned there was a tackle or something, and no one made a great tackle. 3 or 4 Hawks guys ran over to the bloke and then gave him a big like tussle, like, good stuff, mate.
Mhm.
And he goes, that used to be us. We didn't have that. We've lost all of that. And even himself, which is basically the belief, is effectively gone. So the names on the paper are grand. There's great names in that paper. Of course, Dacos, was apparently primed to go Brownlow. He's out for a while. The wheels are kind of fallen off. And I don't think it's necessarily driven off coaching or driven off necessarily just the players, but I think it's really well driven off that emotion and energy that they managed to drag all the way through to prelim, and it's all finished off. And good on the Hawks, and good on Mitch to basically Sam Mitchell to basically realize that there's a weakness in there's a chink in their armor, and we just got to go after that. Camaraderie, togetherness, hard ball. If you look at the disposals, they absolutely 100 disposals up just about, like, huge. They muscle them out, and that's the way to play them. Can they win now is the question that I have. Do they have enough pieces to go any further into the finals than like a straight set out? We'll find out, I guess.
I just I said it last year going to the finals. I said that style of footy will not work in the finals because you're trusting to be able to run over finals teams, and unlike the home and away, you're not getting the weakened North Melbourne, West Coast, Essendon, again, Essendon, all due respect. You're not going to get those teams that you can bully. You're not. You're going to get the 7 other best teams. And what happened in finals last year, except for the one finals win, Geelong beat them in a close one, Sydney beat them in a close one. I don't like it. I understand it's exciting. I understand it keeps everybody in their seats, because even 25 down, they still have the belief. Every single Collingwood game, if they're down in the 4th quarter, it's the first thing the boundary writer says. And I'm just like, that's great, but you can't do it forever. You just are not going to have those reserves to be able to do it every round. So I just, again, can Fly make some changes to make them to kind of get that to where they're not falling behind anytime and staying up in games like they did kind of early in the season when it seemed like they were manic. Nobody could get by them, and they were scoring and scoring and scoring. I think their forward line is now becoming an issue because they really don't have a full forward. Myachek's not really a full forward. He's kind of a pocket. He's got some size, but he's really a pocket.
Yeah, it's been amazing that he's stuck on an AFL team. It's
Ash
incredible.
Johnson, they can't make up his mind whether he wants to be in or out. He's got great hands, but again, he's very inconsistent. There are games he disappears. It's a team that, honestly, you look at the names on the back of the sheets, as you were kind of saying, this is a good, really, really high powered team. There's just something missing. And I agree with you. I think the energy's gone. The Nick Dacos loss, I don't think it's as big a deal as people making it off. I think he was a beneficiary of how the team plays. That's why he was getting so many disposals, because he is an intelligent footballer. So I think, yes, Oleg Markov is not Nick Dacos. I know that, but he can still be quite the good disposal person when he has footy in hand using his speed. I don't think Collingwood's loss to Nick Dacos is as big a deal. It's just now that it's not the dangerous guy. Like, now teams can kind of focus on some of their other stars, like a DeGoey, like a Taylor Adams, like a Crisp, like a Myachek, a little bit more, because they don't have to worry about what is Nick Dacos doing. So I think that'll be interesting to see how these next 6 weeks without Nick Dacos go, especially with a really tough one against Geelong, and a Geelong team I think are starting to kind of find themselves a little bit. So great.
It's a muscle thing for them. This is what's going to happen. You got minus quick math, 87 uncontested possessions for the Hawks plus. Like, that's similar to what a bunch of teams have done. To once they muscle the ball off you, they muscle the ball off the Pies, and then they basically just hold it, and they're just like, you're going to have to work so hard to get it off me. And teams are starting to do that, and they're working it out, right? If you've got the strong midfield, then it's just a matter of just like using it well after the fact that you've got it. They need to run on, they need to burst, and they just can't do it every time. I think teams have worked it out, and I dare say, do they start just basically losing? I don't know. That's what I reckon.
Well, in some situations, they're losing contested and clearance through the center, and I think in some situations, are they gonna
18-3?
Are they gonna eventually maybe regret trading Brody Grundy, because at least Brody Grundy was even. Cameron can disappear in the center. Cox can disappear in the center. They try, but sometimes they can be bullied. So it's like
Mm.
again, they brought in Mitchell. I think Mitchell was good, but you can kind of see I think his powers are fading a little bit. So all of the things that were working early in the year, they're starting to kind of be chinks, and it'd be
Yeah.
very very interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah.
The Collingwood's going to be must watch, not just because of how exciting their footy is, but they could be a train wreck for these next
Oh,
six
it's.
weeks if it continues like this.
I am saying right now in this podcast, and I'm locking into it. They're going to be a train wreck of a team to watch here going forward. They're going to have to change their entire style. It's too late in the season. They are so embedded into it. They don't have the players to necessarily build it in a different way. And it all comes down to the teams that they play. Do the teams that they play have the pieces to play that style? I think they do. So good luck to them, I guess. But I think it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty for Pies fans for the next few weeks.
It'll be interesting. Let's jump down. Let's jump down the highway from the MCG down to GMHBA as a nice win by the Cats, 97-85, in a game that this was an interesting one because this played at the same time as the Swans GWS game. So I tried not to keep an eye on this one, and I eventually watched the highlights in the game later. But this was the game where it was the injury cup because both of these teams came in quite injured. I mean, Port was
I
missing
like that.
6 or 7 of their starters.
Yeah.
Hawkins was out. Bledsoe was out. Cats get the win, but this is one of those where it's like I think the bigger storyline is what's happened to Port. That's 4 losses in a row. Yes, they have injuries. I understand every team has injuries, but in a basically almost a sandful side at times over the last few rounds. But I don't know what to say. Have the wheels fallen off of Port Adelaide already?
It's hard for me with this. I haven't watched this one back, and but just kind of looking over some general things. The injuries, I think, were pretty significant. I mean, Aaliyah, Dixon, Finlayson.
Mm-hmm.
Dixon, no, although he's one of those other players that, although he's not necessarily kicking the goals, he's doing so much off the ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a muscly guy. You got to put someone on him. He can really impact the contest. He's a scary dude. He'll tackle hard. He'll get some cool stuff done. So, Aaliyah being, an All Australian quality backman, Finlayson, who was one of their better forwards going around. It's just hard. And in looking at the scoreline and looking at some of the highlights and things, it just seemed like they just were running backwards too often. It seemed like the Cats just kind of moving the ball just just a bit beyond them. So like if it's just popping it over the head of them, like over the marker, going a bit wide when they're expecting to go up the center, just taking different angles to the goal. And I think Graham Myers kind of got off the chain a bit, and that wouldn't surprise me, given that style. So I don't say that the Cats are necessarily lucky to win it, but it's more like the game style won it for them. And I'm not saying I still feel pretty strongly about Port. I think they're a pretty sweet side. Are they top two? I never thought they necessarily were, but they're a damn exciting side to win. And I think they're the best team in the rain. So the young kids that they've got there, was it Butter, Rosie, Jason Horn Francis, 23, 20, 22, 23, and 20, respectively. Like they are hard workers, really good users of the ball, and are everywhere. So I think I'm going to put this out there. If it's wet, I'm always going to back Port. Always, just the muscle that they have in that inside, and just the smooth use of that ball. They're amazing, and they're fit as hell. So I'm going to put. This is what I'm saying. I guess after saying all of that, I'm going to put on notice that if the weather turns bad at any of these games, in particular a final, lock it in for Port, because I think they're quite good. And I think they're just having a bit of a quiet run on the way. It's best to have a bit of a dive now before the finals kicks in. So maybe it's just one of those things where just prime themselves up, and they might be resting some of these players for a half decent reason. They might be 50-50 and they're deciding to like rest them now, keeping the top four, rather than, see them get too banged up and injured going forward. Like that's the two big men in the front and the back. So I don't know. I'm not making excuses for them, but I don't think they're that far off either. I think they're still quite decent.
Yeah, I mean they have a 10-point gap. They have a 10-point gap between themselves and Carlton being in fourth and fifth. The
Mm.
only worry for Port Adelaide is that leaving the confines of the Adelaide Oval is a little frightening with Melbourne and Collingwood having to go to the MCG. Not exactly
Mm.
easy matchups, no matter one or two. So we'll have to kind of see how that goes. Again, I agree with you. I think Butters, Rosie, Horn Francis, and then you get the old heads of Wines, Boak, and then Drew is always in there. Their midfield is really good on its day. Their issue is they have no rock. Lysette's been out with
Mm.
Lysette's been out with injury. Dixon was subbing in the ruck and he's out. Same thing with Finlayson. So it's like right now they're getting hammered in the center clearance because ruck is gone. And that's I think their issue. If they can get their ruck stocks healthy, then I think Port comes back into it. That'll let their defense rest a little bit because they're not getting constant pressure. Alira Lear coming back should be an instant upgrade. The only issue is they lost Mackenzie in this last game. So Tom Jonas, who'd been kind of down in the sample for most of the season, I think is going to see a lot more minutes up in the big time just because they just don't have the numbers for it. So Geelong, fantastic. Ryan Myers is still continuing to make people think that can a guy that gets a ton of goal assists but not many goals get in as a AA member, and I'm leaning that way because I think he is
Yeah.
such a impact guy for that team that I think he should, honestly. I'm gonna do my own AA, and I right now I have him pretty high in my list of forwards in my kind of consideration, but it'll be very interesting. This is a Geelong team that again they're not going to die. They're going to keep coming. Yes, they've got injuries, but they're an experienced team with some of the guys they have there. They're not going to be out of it. I cannot wait for the game tomorrow night because I think it's going to be insane this game because if Geelong win it, panic is going to go nuts in Collingwood land and it's going to be
Yeah.
fascinating to watch
And
it.
yeah, I see that happening. So yeah.
All right, sir. Let's jump to it. The game you got to go to out at home Bush, the Swannies get a Sydney Derby win. I'm not going to call it Battle of the Bridge because, as you said in the Bevy of Bloods podcast, what freaking bridge are they talking about? Because none of them really connect the two clubs. Sydney Swans 96, GWS Giants 85, an 11-point win, the 7-game win streak. Bye bye GWS win streak. Had to love that. But as a Swans fan, there's the excitement of last year back into this team. They're getting healthy. They're getting some guys back. They're starting to play good footy. Errol Goulden, as everybody's saying, I'm not going to do the singing because that's not part of my podcast shtick here. But oh, Errol, congratulations.
Oh, Errol.
That goal from the boundary,
Yeah.
sensational. Chris, you
Yeah.
got to be at this game. I know it was wet. I know it was miserable, but seeing a Swans win had to make you feel better.
There's the two best things about football: Swans winning and wet football. And I got to do both of those last Saturday. It was amazing. That goal that Errol kicked was on our side, not too far from us, and we got to watch him run. We were in that back pocket that he basically started off from. We were basically right in the wing, and he ran all the way through, and we watched him do it. And we watched the whole back and forth with Wixie and the hard work that Wixie put in there as well to keep the guys off. It was great. And then also Heaney's goal from pretty much the exact same spot where
Mm-hmm.
the ball just kind of stopped about a couple of inches. I use the American term, a couple of inches away from the boundary there, and then he took that off and blasted. It was a great game, and definitely it was really weird. Spotless Stadium for GWS. I'm saying I'll call it Giant Stadium. Um, it was. It's a really fun stadium to watch a game. It's quite small. I think it probably maxes out like 20 something, but it's just everywhere you sit, you've got a great view, and the crowd actually gets into it. It's actually got great concessions there. It's actually unbelievably underrated stadium, but the crowd was just not in it. It was wild. The Swans crowd was so dead. We were so nervous the whole way through. We kicked 11 in a row. If you're not going to kick 11 straight in the first half and you're not just losing your minds, there's something seriously wrong. We were so, and I say we because I felt the same way. We were so nervous about just watching us basically let this kind of crumble. And to be fair, they came back pretty hard. So it was a great game. A lot of key players played really well, but in particular, a few out players played really well. And I say out, I suggest like not the standards. So Errol, of course, had an unbelievable game. Lloydie and Cunners had great games between each other. McLean and Amati had fantastic games. Logan, although not hitting the scoreboard as many times, had a really great game of effort. It was just a fantastic game to watch the team slowly come together. The way you described it, some healthy, some players starting to come into form. You got to really see it, and it's nice to beat the Giants because when they do play physical and they do play physical, especially against the Swans, it's hard to see, especially with some of the young guys we got. But it was grand. It was really, really fun. And I'm starting to believe now. So I'm really believing, and I just want to see this through because we're excited. We're so pumped.
Well, and I know this. I know this is the neutral all AFL one, but I'm gonna put my red hats on. Aaron Francis. I know he didn't get a ton of statistics, but I think he played magnificent for coming in and being kind of
100%.
he's the bane for some Swans fans of why did we bring. I think he's very very serviceable in moments, and to this was one of those weeks he showed why he can be one of those good players in the right situation. And what you call it, Wixie's pressure in this game was phenomenal. Absolutely
Yeah.
loved his game in this one. Again, not a great statistical game for him, but it's the one percenters, it's the little efforts that he did that changed the game for guys like Heaney, like Errol,
Mm.
like Logan, like Armadi. He helped the rest of his forwards out because he was putting that pressure on. He was making guys make decisions quicker. And a huge shout out. We said it before. Will Hayward's ability to take Sam Taylor and only allow him one intercept mark in this game, one of the
Mm.
best intercept markers in the game this year. Sam Taylor takes him out of the game, totally changed the game for the Swans. Huge, huge win there. So huge raps to Wilbur on that one. Fantastic performance there. And again, the belief, you can tell the belief is into a lot of Swans fans. It's there. We now sit in the situation where two of the three wins, and you still you still should make finals. Not easy 3 games. A Gold Coast game that I think everybody that I've talked to is definitely afraid of a letdown after a big win over GWS. An Adelaide Crows team that at Adelaide Oval is very difficult to beat. And then the D's at the SCG. So it'll be fascinating to keep track of the final 3 games. But
Yeah.
this warmed my heart because my producer is GWS. So give a little
Look,
stick to him a little bit.
I'll give some love over. Look, Tom Green was incredible.
He
Tom
was. He
Green is
played
a
really well.
monster,
Yep.
absolute monster of a guy. Toby Green was. It's so frustrating to be a Swans fan and playing against GWS when you know how good Toby is, and
Hmm.
you know on his own back he can basically win the game. You could double tag the guy, he'll still probably win the game on his own back. Like he's
Hmm.
that good. So those two, Tom and Toby, were just wildly good. And yes, yeah, shout out to them. They were an amazing team. And I've got a soft spot for GWS. I grew up in the Greater Western Sydney district. If they would have been around 10 years earlier, there's a strong chance myself, little boy in Campbelltown, would have been a GWS fan. The Swans got me first. I hope they get through, and I hope they put some damage on some teams, as long as they're not the Swans.
Hmm.
So yeah, all for it. Bring it on. Go GWS behind the Swannies, I say.
It's one of those where Kieran Briggs has impressed me this year with his
Mm.
performance. Again, this is a Giants team that again, I think a lot of people looked at new coach, new season. They were going to go through some growing pains. I know I had him in my bottom 7 or 8 myself just because I thought it's going to take time for Kingsley to get his system into these guys, and it has flourished really, really quickly. They've been fun to watch because they are a pesky side. I heard the statistic. They keep talking about it. They've won at 9 different venues this year. Well,
Mm.
that's great. It's fantastic. I don't really know how it's really applicable. Their 9 wins are at 9 different stadiums. Congratulations. This is a Giants team I love to watch because you just never know what's going to happen. They can have their moments. They're fun. They're so much fun to watch. They were incredibly scary for most Swans fans. Like as you said, the nerve you could tell online the nerves were there because everybody was
Yeah.
like, "Oh my
Oh
OMG,
no.
are we gonna get knocked out of our finals chances by the damn rivals like we have in the finals 3 times?" It's like, ugh. Oh
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah. It's nervous playing against them. And I look, I love the fact that that whole club gets around playing against the Swans.
Mhm,
We actually had an interview with the Squinters who have the Never Surrender GWS podcast last week,
mhm,
and a great little chat with Ragnar from that group over there. Very nice guy. They do have a cool little podcast actually. They have songs and stuff on their grand. And he was suggesting that for the most part they don't really make a massive deal out of it, but the club kind of does. So, and
mhm.
I love the banter. I love it. I love everything about it. The Battle of Sydney or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, so I'm all
Sydney
about it.
Derby. Just call it the Sydney
Sydney
Derby. There
Derby,
is no
Sydney Derby.
bridge.
There's a bunch of it's like basically like saying the Battle of the Bridge for Adelaide against Port Adelaide. Like there is bridges, but it makes no sense. All right,
Mhm.
there is a bridge, but it's not even remotely close. That's basically what we're dealing with over here. So yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to go down that path, but I am
Hey, I
like they're
loved
a
it. I
grand
loved
team.
it on
I
the
hope they
Bevy
get into it.
podcast. It made me chuckle so much as I was listening to it and hearing you go off on that. I had to
It
admit,
makes me angry.
I know, but the one thing, the social media teams going back and forth, that was gold. That was
Oh, it's great.
absolutely gold. Like I gotta give it that. That was so fantastic to see them go off on each other because
Did you
there were
notice
some
that they
great
called us?
comebacks. There were some
Did,
great comebacks.
Did you notice that they called us South Melbourne? They were
Yeah.
like Greater Western Sydney versus South Melbourne. I was like, and they were putting that everywhere. I'm like, you know what? That's nice and subtle. A little bit of banter. I like it. It's got everything that's nice about like a good like brotherly banter. I'm all for it. I'm here
Well,
for it.
and then what was it? There was one response. Sydney came back, and the response was like, "You're 149 years old. We're only 12. Who?"
Yeah.
Like that was
Or you're beating up
gold.
a 12-year-old. You could tell that they were waiting on that. They were just sitting on that response. I love it.
Exactly.
I think it's great. So good
Oh,
on
it
him.
was
One quick shout out, if you don't mind,
sure.
McLean. I know McLean got his 4 goals. Everyone's excited about it. Listen to our podcast from the beginning of the season, probably like game 2, game 3, 4. He's been really, really good for a long time. Last season as well.
Hmm.
It's basically come like this. He's been impacting the ball really well in the air, getting it down to ground, making sure that he's in the right places, working his ass off. He's been doing 12, 14 Ks at a time any given game. The guy was working so hard this year and last year. We were really excited about his season this year. And it only became a little bit different, I guess, when he started getting some of the inside minutes, when he started doing a bit more ruck, and because we basically had to. Um, and then amongst all of this, he's also started scoring, and that's great. But he's not going to be able to
Hmm.
do that every week. The kid is an absolute dynamite. When we started seeing his 1%ers start climbing up and staying up consistently, we're like, okay, not only is he getting everywhere and working hard, he's getting to the places where the ball was, and it's just a matter of time before he really starts impacting.
Hmm.
He's got probably got a couple of year contract ahead of him. That's probably going to be signed, I'd hope, in the next couple of weeks. He's kicked 4 goals this week. He's got plenty of goals. He's got a place in the side, even if he's not kicking goals. So get excited about Hayden McLean. Get excited about in the last couple of years. Go back and watch some of our stuff. He's very, very good, and just doing good things from a
Hmm.
good player. Noddy's been calling for him to go back, be a backman for some time. Big tank, good body, can contest. So that's something we'll consider. And that's something that he could do a bit of a swingman role. You
Hmm.
never know. We need someone like that. So yeah, that's me, McLean. Big
Almost like
fan. Get into it.
The old Sam Reed is the last 2 minutes be
Exactly.
able to go back and be that intercept possession loose. That
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. He's been a wonder this year. He's been great with Buddy having in and out a little bit, and then like I said, Logan having a little bit of struggles, but having hit the great hands. And like I said, Armani, McDonald, Heaney, McLean all have great hands. It's like I think the Swans have a lot of future still to look forward to. Cannot wait for that. So
Mhm.
we will pull our red hats off, go back to as neutral as possible as we go down to Tassie and Bluntstone Arena as the Melbourne Demons get the scare of a lifetime for about 3 quarters and get the win 103-71. But the Roos, there for a while, I was watching this game going, you got to be kidding me. If the Roos beat the D's and the Hawks beat the Collingwood Magpies in the same round, I'm gonna lose my mind in the most spectacular fashion.
I love it. Like, what a competition. If you don't turn up to play even just a quarter, you're going to get done. This is what the competition is all about. This is what you need out of a competition like this. So if you're going to go to sleep, even just like, oh yeah, we're going to turn up, we're going to roll these kids over. I don't think so. So Bombers almost saw it. Demons almost saw it. They got too much class. They turned it on and they got the job done. But it didn't come for free. So no win is going to come for free in this competition anymore. And I hope everyone realizes that. Fans, clubs, everyone. So good on North, man. Like, is this the Alistair Clarkson effect? Probably not. Maybe it is. I don't know. But it's probably just a bunch of players that turn up on a day when the other competition didn't. And I don't know. We'll find out where this ends up. What I'm excited about now is I think the Bombers play North Melbourne next week. So we'll talk about in the next section. But
Mhm.
yeah, my goodness. Yeah, North could maybe hurt some people on the way out. Who knows?
It's a little bit. I think Ben Cunnington retired too, and I think there was a little bit. There was that. I
Yeah,
think
passion.
you had that jump a little bit. Yeah, and
Mm.
it's one of those. Again, the D's are so good. They got jumped, and I think they got blindsided a little bit, and I think they weren't ready for it. But then their class, Pickett started, as Keziah Pickett started getting going, Chandler started getting going, Petrarca started seeing the footy, Viney and Brayshaw and Gone started kind of dominating a little bit through the mids, and then it kind of just it steamrolled a little bit on the Roos, and they didn't have the experience to be able to stop it. But again, I think there's a lot of building blocks both in Hawthorn and at North Melbourne, a lot more than West Coast. I think next year they're going to be better. They just need a little bit more time to kind of get their systems down a little bit, a few changes. So I think positivity is coming on the Roos band on the Roos way to get D's so good. They're the team in the top four that actually decided to win. So that kind of helped them out. Now they're into second place. So it'll be definitely fascinating to see how that goes. So I'm going to jump to this game at Marvel Stadium between Carlton
Mhm.
and St. Kilda, and I will let you have your mic because I know in our text in our message chat you're licking your chops on this one. But Carlton has found form. That's 7 in a row now. They're in the finals.
Mhm.
They're up to fifth. The old Baggy Blues, after earlier this year yelling and throwing the scarves, saying they didn't deserve it. I mean, I really want to find those fans. I really do. Like, I want to sit down and I go, do you feel really, really stupid right now?
Yeah, I mean, don't ever disbelieve your own team. Like, I don't care what team you go for, just don't do that. It's not indicative of. Sorry, it doesn't show you passion for the club. It actually does the opposite. Is that
Mm-hmm.
your love for the club is limited to their wins, and that's not necessarily the way to go. Okay, you can explain reasons, effort and whatnot. You can say whatever you want about the club, but like in the players on the team, they've got a good list put together and they're going to put it together and they coach well and they've got some mad players in there and this thing's got to start happening. So I'm glad. I'm actually really glad that they're putting it together. I mean, I don't care that much that they win or lose, but I'm mostly just glad that Carlton has the list to win and they're starting to do so. Now, I start with giving the love out to Carlton. Now, here's the other shoe. I think St Kilda are just not a great side. And I know they're missing some pieces. I know Membry's out. I think Jackie Jones is out. There's probably a couple of others that I'm not sure of. I'm not aware of. But I don't see anything that I would get me excited about this team. It feels like it's the exact same. It feels like it's the same bloke running around everywhere. Like it's like a video game version of itself, where you have all the players are just the same guy with a different number on the back. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't see there's like the X factors. I don't see that there's this dynamic movement or this dynamic football all played. It's this really dull, boring football. And I know that's Ross's style. I know the boss is over there and he's going to build this style. The game's moved on from that style and he's going to have to work it out. And does he have the people and the process to do it? I don't know. So I'm not surprised too much that St Kilda is sinking like a stone, like I said they would, and I don't, and I suggest that they will continue. And I think Carlton kind of didn't even pull up 100% for this game, so they better turn up for next week. But yeah, it is what it is. It says what it says. I think the game went out the way it was meant to go, and I'm not surprised about any part of it.
Yeah, I don't want to spend a lot of time again. The Blues did what they needed to do. The Saints, I'm just not convinced. Like, I almost look at them like imposter syndrome. I mean, they're sitting in seventh right now. Should they really even be in the finals right now? As as the way they are playing. But looking at their final three games, I think the imposter syndrome may end here very soon. So let's move on. Last game of the round, go out to Optus Stadium, and it almost happens again as Brisbane survive
Yeah.
in the West 77-74. I look at it, this Brisbane team at the Gabba, fantastic. On the road, not so much.
They got to win. And that's all they needed, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they just needed those points. And I mean, we can be as, I don't know, we can be as nice if we want to, but at the end of the day, I think they're coming second, right? They're in the second place. So good on them. Like it's grand for to see Brisbane there, and it's only taken a few scares. I'm going to talk a little bit about Freo. I think Freo has got together a sweet side, and everything's grand, but they just managed to find ways to disappoint themselves. And they haven't got all the pieces. Their forward line still doesn't have that proper strength. There's a few outliers, a few like B players that need to just be better, or they need to just plug the better players in. I don't think they're too far off from being decent. Last year they were on fire. They lost some players in the offseason. They were effectively given away because they were just like, you don't want to play here? All right, go find a new home. And then those players did. And you can't do that again.
Mm-hmm.
Like a list manager needs to be better than that. So I think they would have learned their lesson. I think they're going to be grand. So I've got no problem with Frio and where they're heading is. They should have done better this year. But in the competition that is as intense as it is, as close as it is, you don't turn up for a couple of weeks, you're going to get smashed for it. Brisbane almost found that out. But yeah, Brisbane's still the fiery mob that they are, and they're probably the most exciting, dangerous forwards going around. I would hate to be a backman playing against them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get excited about it. So I don't know. I think we probably see a fair few more Brisbane close wins, as they probably don't do a whole lot until they have to. Maybe that's the way
Yeah,
it is for them.
Fremantle's one of those teams. I think it took them a lot longer than I think they anticipated to fill the holes of Griffin Logue and Blake
Mm,
Akers. I think, and that's kind of threw them off. And Sean Darcy is very much a linchpin. You notice ever since
yeah.
when Darcy goes out, they take a step back. Yes, Jackson is great, but I don't think Jackson is there yet to be a full-time rock. So I
Yeah.
think
He's
there's
also
still
very
some.
young.
I know, and
What
I
is he,
understand
21
that,
or
but
something? So yeah, absolutely. He's not, if he's that good at 21 as a ruckman, imagine how good he's going to be at 27, 28, 29, right? So like get excited about him. He's the real deal. But yeah, I totally appreciate exactly what you're saying, that he's not quite that level yet. And you
mhm.
see that there's a hole in the middle of the ground when he's there. Yeah.
Definitely, for sure. So, all right, that is all nine games taken care of. Again, a wild round of footy, especially with some close calls that I think would have really been interesting if they would have went the other way. So, we'll go to the burning question section of the podcast, and I'm interested. I tried not to talk about this too in grandize because I want to hear your response on this. Is the Hawthorn upset over Collingwood the biggest upset so far this season?
Yeah, I think without a doubt it was. It's second to only what could have been. Actually, probably Sydney's win over North when they won by the administrative error. That that's an on that's an on-field upset win, I'm afraid. But yeah, absolutely. In terms of what the table is doing, and it's just the way they won too. It was convincing. It wasn't like scraping a win through. It was from the second the ball was bounced, it was a convincing win their way. It was just, and it was a tactical win as well as a personnel win. It was everything. It was a very clear win, and it's put such a kick and such a dent into that team now in injury and in just tactical showmanship that I struggle to see how they're going to come back from that.
Yeah, it'd be. I completely agree. This sent shockwaves. I remember seeing the score. I was like, "You have to be kidding me! Did that
Mm.
seriously happen?" So, and again, the oddball about the American brain in me is that most of these games are happening overnight, and I don't always stay up to watch every single game, or I would not sleep on the weekends. But when I saw this result, I was like, "What?" Like it blew my mind, and I'm like, I watched the game, and as you said, it was not close. Like Hawthorne just dominated this game. And I was sitting here going, isn't this the Collingwood team that every single media outlet was saying, "I might as well hand them the flag. There's nobody that's going to beat them." And I
Yeah,
think that was the part that, like I said, it was like an out of body experience. I was like, this is how is this happening? And then hearing, unfortunately, like I said, I don't wish anybody injury, but hearing Nick Dacos go down, and I'm like, that's going to be a blow. I don't think it's going to be as big a blow as some people are making off. I think the way the pies are structured, I think they'll be okay. But
Hmm.
it just everything kind of snowballed on them, and it was just the perfect storm for Hawthorne. And again, I'm going to give Coach Mitchell some kudos. He's doing things with a list that I wasn't expecting. They're closer to making finals. They're closer to finding that right mix better than anybody would have expected after some of the people that they moved out this year. He's looking like a genius the more and more the season is going on for moving a Jaeger O'Meara, for moving Mitchell. I think Hawthorne is going to be a team to keep an eye on because they could be scary good faster than I think some people are expecting. So, which as Swans fans is interesting little history between the two of us over about a 5 or 6 year period. So we'll jump to it. 3 rounds left, and so many storylines besides the fact
Oh,
between fifth and 12th, there's like 6 point difference. So any machination
it's
can
math.
happen.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you are watching? I mean, let me add in a little bit to this. Take the Swans out of it, okay? Non-Swans. I know you love your Swans. The Bevy of Bloods, fantastic podcast. What is the one thing, minus the Swans, that you are watching over these last 3 rounds to potentially happen?
I'm watching teams 14 to 17 because I'm wiping West Coast out of this. But teams 14 to 17 basically putting massive kicks into the opportunity that some of the other teams in finals contention will have. And I'm putting the Swans in that pace as well. So I'm talking about Hawthorn with the Bulldogs for this week. Why can't Hawthorn win that game? Richmond versus St Kilda this week. Why can't Richmond win that game and bounce back? They don't. They go hot and cold, but they can win.
Mhm.
Giants versus Port Adelaide, of course, they're both kind of finals fighters. Who's going to kick each other into the curb right here? So there's a lot of games, Brisbane and Adelaide less so because Brisbane's pretty much cemented themselves, but definitely Sydney and Gold Coast, Essendon and North Melbourne finished that off. So like we've got some games even just in this week that are just so dangerous to the competition that at the end of this week, we could see a whole new situation of who's ready for finals, who gets knocked out, or whether we still have, effectively 12 teams fighting for 8 spaces, which is basically kind of what we're dealing with now. And then the following week, you got yourself Suns versus Carlton, Essendon versus Giants, right? Adelaide versus Sydney, right? Hawthorn versus Melbourne, Fremantle versus Port Adelaide. Like there is a few top 4 teams that might just start dropping if they don't turn up. There's definitely teams in the middle that will lose everything they have for this season if they don't turn up for one quarter for this next 3 weeks.
Mhm.
It's going to be a wild, wild 3 weeks of football. I am here for it. Canceling everything in my calendar. I'm going nowhere. There's going to be a lot of football being watched this week.
I'm 100% with you. I cannot wait for tomorrow morning for me to watch that the Cats game. And then
Yeah.
one of the first games to round up is the Sydney Gold Coast. But there's not a bad game this round. I
Yeah.
cannot wait because there's so much I mean, a frog's bum is the only thing that's tighter than this ladder. It is insane how things could change with 2 or 3 wins here in a few things. So I cannot wait for it. So we get to it. We get to see producer Ross again. Ross again. I'm sorry for the Giants, but the Swans will get a little bit up. So I know this won't be easy, but let's throw it to him. Ross, what is your question of the week? So
O'Connor, that's a beautifully weighted kick.
Currently, the finals consist of 4 teams that have had very notable winning streaks this year. At 8, you got GWS. They just finished off a 7-game winning streak. You had Collingwood with a 8-game winning streak. Port Adelaide had that massive 13-game winning streak. And right now, the longest active winning streak in the league is with Carlton. Carlton, who's been Collingwood and Port Adelaide. Now, with that being said, guys, who has had the most impressive winning streak this season? Does it have to be wins? Does it have to be the teams that they beat during those? Is it going to be how those winning streaks have changed the look of the ladder and where they were standing previously before they went on that run? So let's hear it. Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your show.
O'Connor, that's a beautifully weighted kick.
Thanks, Ross. Another great question. I'm fascinated to see how that goes because your Giants have had a nice little win streak. Port's had a nice little win streak. Sydney's on a smallish but good win streak. So I'll repeat the question, Chris. Who has had the most impressive win streak so far this season?
That's a tough one on the spot, to be fair. I'd probably go so far. Wow. Okay, so yeah, the Giants have had a fantastic one. Carlton's had a bit of a one. Port Adelaide had one. I'd probably put Port Adelaide. I think Port Adelaide on their little win streak played the Bulldogs twice, and I'm pretty sure twice in the rain. And I think that's why I got so excited about watching them because I kind of got into them for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think and also the way that they started off all of that, and the way that when they were not playing, kind of when they were wavering, I think they just got a win, just scraped a win off a couple of like the smaller teams, and everyone's questioning them. And just to see them kind of basically just solidify themselves and just play this incredibly strong, high skill based style of football, it's impossible not to enjoy it. So I'd probably say Port Adelaide was particularly interesting just because of the maturity that the team went from. You know, the first win was against the Swans. I do recall round 7 something.
I believe so.
And just what happened there after that. So I think I'd put that down as mine.
Yeah, it's hard not to go with that. The number makes that impressive. If you just go by who they were beating, I'll give a little bit of love to the Giants because their win streak, they were beating teams above them. They were beating teams they weren't supposed to beat. So I think Port's impressive because of the number in their streak, because it was like 12 or 13. But I think the Giants' quality wins in there, even though it was only 7, it's hard not to argue that that wasn't impressive enough. So there you go. A little bit of Giants love there for producer Ross on that one. So, and now we go to Swans. But again, I'm not trying to send out negative juju in this because that's not what I'm into. But I must ask this because I want to be in reality here. If for any reason the Swans miss the finals this year, would you consider this season a fail?
Yeah, I think it would. And I can appreciate why some Swans fans are like, we got an injury. And I don't get me wrong, I totally agree. Like we really got ourselves a kick in the head round 3 or whatever, and we had to just work our way through it. I would, and I just on the basis that we do have the team to do it. And I can totally understand that we lost injuries, we lost players, or in and out. You know, we had like a ruckman for a while, then we lost one, and we got the other one, then we lost him. So Hickey was up, then Laddams went in, and then Hickey's back in again, and then he was out again, and then got him just back. And the back line was just basically pulled together by sticky tape for a while there, and then we had to have Nick Blakey going out back, and then we had Aaron Francis and Will Good. Like Good having to like play in the gather round just out of nowhere just to play a game, you know. So, and we had no one else in the club to play defense. So, having said all of that, there are games we should have won. We should have beat Port, right?
Darn
we
win.
Should have beat. That's right. And so there's enough games that we should have won. Richmond as the other example, the Cats and the draw, there's the other example. There's enough games that should have been wins, just if it wasn't just for like a bit of just a quarter turning off
Giants
and letting
game
those
1.
teams back in. Yep. So
30 seconds for
that's right.
Toby Green to get loose.
Yeah. Why let the most dangerous person in football loose around the inside 50 at a stoppage? You're insane. Anyway, but so I would say that if those are 4 games that we probably should have won, that puts us up 8 points. We're a lock in for finals, despite all the injuries that we had. So I would suggest that I basically said if we fail, if we don't get in the finals, it's an F. If we scrape in the finals, that to me is like a B or a C, kind of like scraping a C, lock in as a B, and then probably top 6 would have been for me an A. So very small winner. Those had that pocket, and so I'd see it as a bit of a loss for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to disagree with you. Completely agree. There were wins there, despite the injuries. There were wins there that they get those done. They're in the finals, and they're even maybe even in that top 4 contention if they win 2 or 3 of those, because that jumps them up the ladder big time. But some unfortunately, it is the way it goes. So that'll do it for the questions. We kind of jump to, like I said, I kind of take over the podcast with my team of the week and power ranking. So really quickly, Chris, we'll go to my team of the week. You've already heard it, so I don't have to explain it. Round 21, starting with the defenders and the fullback line. Essendon's Nick Hind, Hawthorn's James Sicily, GWS's Nick Haynes, I know we had to hear about his 100 games all the time in that game, which was so much fun, but guy kicks a goal. I think he had a pretty good game back there. Halfback line sees Essendon's Mason Redmond, Hawthorns James Weddle, and Sydney's Ollie Florent. You kick a goal from the back line, I usually give you a little bit of love. We go to the wings. Obviously, Errol Goulden and Carlton's Blake Akers are the wings. In the center sees Marcus Bontempelli of the Western Bulldogs, Essendon's Darcy Parrish, and Collingwood's Jordan DeGoey. In the ruck, giving some love to the old guy, Toddy Goldstein of the North Melbourne Roos. Jump to the forwards. At the half-forward line sees Essendon's Kyle Langford, Western Bulldogs, Jamara Ugle-Hagan, and Geelong's Ollie Henry. At the full forward line sees Adelaide's Darcy Fogarty, Port's Willie Rioli, and Sydney's Hayden McLean. We jump to the bench. In defense sees Adelaide's Mitch Hinge, Ruckman's Fremantle's Luke Jackson, Adelaide's midfielder Matt Crouch, and forward Melbourne's Alex Neil Bullen. So an interesting group this year. This was a very fascinating round of footy with some fun statistical games. Like I said, Bont went absolutely boonta in the first game, so it was hard not to get him in there, and said a little bit of love for Sydney, but well deserved.
Yep, beauty. I love all of those. That's a really good wrap up actually of the games and everything that kind of get on. I like the Nick Haynes love. That's kind of something a little bit special, but he deserves it. Why not?
Yeah. Well, like I said, if a defender can kick a goal, I give him a little bit of love, because sometimes they don't always get a shot to do that. So you bury a goal, we'll give you some love. So some fun power rankings. I'm fascinated with it. Some people are going to lose their minds when they see this, because powering, again, I am a what have you done for me lately type of person. Last 5 games, what's your win streak, and then kind of how that goes. So at 5 position is the Western Bulldogs. At 4, the Adelaide Crows. At 3, the Sydney Swans. Number 2, the Melbourne Demons. And last but not least, at 1, the Carlton Blues. Yes, no Collingwood. 2 losses in a row. Bye-bye, Collingwood. We'll have to see how they go from there. But a fun little what have you done for me lately power rankings.
That's pretty good. And Carlton easy with got that one. I totally agree with all that. That's pretty sweet.
Alrighty, and now to my favorite part. We are just hours away from the first game, so we got to do some tipping. Let's jump into it. Friday night footy, blockbuster game. Cannot wait for this. Geelong v Collingwood. Who do you like in this one?
The Cats by 40. Lock it in. Lock it in.
Here's the thing. I'm gonna tip the Pies only because they are at the MCG and they get a little bit of momentum. The Tommy Hawkins not being there, I think, really hurts them. If Tommy Hawkins is in this game, and I've seen the teams, unfortunately he's not, then I probably would have switched my tip to Geelong, because I don't think Darcy Moore is iffy, and I think it actually opens up Jeremy Cameron and some of their forwards. No Hawkins, I think, then allows them to be able to kind of zone coverage Cameron and lets more be there. So I'm going to tip the Pies, but I still think this one's close. I think it's under 2 goals. It'll be a fantastic game of footy. Cannot wait for it. Jump to Marvel Stadium, and the game you were discussing, North Melbourne hosts the Essendon Bombers. I want to tip the Bombers, but I came close to tipping the Roos after the performance that they did. I came very, very close. I'm going to tip the Bombers. I think this is a tight one. I think the Roos stay in it. I think the Bombers, again, kind of scrape by.
I love being just a one-off person to turn up to a podcast, so I can say what I say with little repercussion. I'm going to go so far as to say Kangaroos, and I know that that's insane. It's insane, but the Bombers just disappoint me so much, and I just want to give a little bit of love and a little bit of hope to the Roos fans. I think they might get up in a very, very close one anyway.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Sydney Cricket Ground sees Sydney take on the Gold Coast Suns. This one terrifies me. I'm so worried. I'm going to tip the Swans, but this one's one of those. I'm going to hold my breath for most of this game, unfortunately.
Yeah, look, the heart says Sydney, but the head also says Sydney. I think we're just kind of playing pretty good football, and the pieces of the puzzle that we need to work are there. I think we do have the ways to slow down someone like a Noah Anderson as well, who's just an absolute monster of a guy and can go up there and kick some goals. I think he's kicked 13 so far. So I think we can do it. I think we've got the pieces to do it. So I'm going to say Sydney by, say, 2.5 goals.
To anybody listen to this, the one person I know most likely is going to get the Anderson matchup, I think, is Rowbottom.
Yeah,
I think
maybe
Roy gets
him.
that one.
get going with him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll be fun. All right, up to
And
the gap. Go
it's going
ahead.
to be, sorry, just one quickly. It's be interesting whether Errol gets tagged at all. If
Be
he goes
interesting.
inside, whether Took sits on him, and whether the teams actually start to do what they should have been doing for a while, which is shutting down Errol. So let's see where that ends up.
Yeah, be interesting. Up to the GABA as the Brisbane Lions host the Adelaide Crows. For the Swan supporters, when it comes to teams fighting with us for the 8, this is one of those. I'm gonna tip Brisbane. Crows leave the confines of the Adelaide Oval, and sometimes they just are not the same. And again, GABA Brisbane Lions play really, really well. I'm gonna tip the Lions in this one.
Yeah, like I said before, I think Adelaide doesn't do too well stop teams scoring on them, and I think Brisbane's got one of the scarier forward lines going around. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit of a bloodbath over here by about 7 goals or so.
All right, MCG. This one's going to be an absolute cracking game. Carlton v Melbourne. Who do you like in this one?
I want to say Carlton, and I don't have a whole lot to back it up with, because I genuinely think the Demons are a better team in a lot of different ways. Have they released teams yet? I don't know whether.
Some of them. Why? What are you looking? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm looking to see whether that fantastic, delicious midfield has kind of broken up a bit, and it doesn't look so. No, so I think Clayton Oliver's is in. Fantastic.
Yep.
So there you go. So I've changed my mind. I'm going to go with the D's for
And
sure.
Grundy.
There's no doubt about it.
Grundy and Oliver
well,
in, Petty,
I think
Harms,
Grundy might
and
get
Hibbert out. I'm gonna tip the D's only because I think that the biggest advantage that they have is Max Gawn, and Max Gawn can make or break games. Pitnet's serviceable. DeConing can come in, but I think Gawn's going to have himself a field day against Pitnet, and I think that's going to open up. It's going to give Oliver, it's going to give Viney, it's going to give Petrarca when he makeshifts, goes into the center there. I think it's going to give first to the footy, which is going to hurt Carlton's ability with the footy, because Curnow is absolutely in electric form. The May matchup will be fascinating between those two, because I know May is probably one of the best in the competition at shutting down guys. Him, Sam Taylor, and Sicily are three of the best defenders in the entire competition when it comes to taking a guy out of the game. I just think Melbourne has more. They have more weapons to go to than Carlton does. I think Carlton is a lot of its team, which is great, but sometimes you just need that guy to go my time. And I think Melbourne has that. So I'm going to tip Melbourne in this one, but this is going to be an absolute cracker. Cannot wait to watch this one. From an absolute cracker to a game I think is going to be surprisingly close. Optus Stadium, Western Derby, West Coast Eagles, Fremantle Dockers. I'm going to tip the Dockers, but this is my keep an eye on upset special. Keep an eye on West Coast. They are at home. They tend to play better than Optus Stadium. It is a West Coast home game, so they will have the majority of the fans there. I'm going to tip Fremantle, but this I think is much, much closer than some people think.
I can totally appreciate why you say that. And I would also suggest that this would have the little dinglings of maybe of an upset. But I'd say that Fremantle probably gets a bit of a scare during the game and manages to pull it together. So yeah, going for Freo this one.
Alrighty, UTAS Stadium down in Tasmania as Hawthorn host the Doggies, and this one, are you gonna take the leap? Can Hawthorn knock off the Doggies?
Yes, I think Hawthorn's got this one. And I'm going to say because Sam Mitchell is going to, he's a tactician as it stands, and he's going to try to do things to shut down some of the players. If you can get, Bont is near impossible to tag. The guy's too big, he works too hard, he's too good with the ball, he's clean as hell. He's near impossible. But Libba could be, and they get the clearances of those two gentlemen. And Tim English, although you can let him run around and he may damage you, but he might not necessarily do that. He might just run around, get his possessions, and not necessarily impact a whole lot forward. So I am going to go so far as to say I think Hawthorn will get an upset in this week.
All right, Finn McGuinness to Libba. That'll be a fantastic couple of bulls in there. I'm going to tip the Doggies only because I think if they can't tag Bont, I think Bont can open up this game. Sicily is it'd be interesting to see who does Sicily get. Does he get Jamara? Does he get Naughton? And then kind of how that goes. Can Cody Waitman get off? Can Cody Waitman get loose? If they can get a spread of goal kickers instead of just one kicking 5 or 6, if they can get 2 or 3 at 3 and 4, I think the Doggies have a lot of weapons at forward. Doggies win this one, but I agree. I think this is tight. I agree with you. I think Finn McGuinness goes to Libba to try to cut off Bontempelli's possessions. And I think that'll be interesting. If they can do that, then Hawthorn is really in this, because their forward line at times can be very, very dangerous when they get supply, because that midfield is young, it's talented. Newcomb, Day, and all those, they're fun to watch. So this will be another great one on, for me, a Saturday night. So, all right, over to Marvel Stadium. This is the Disappointment Cup, as I call it. St. Kilda v. the Richmond Tigers. I know Richmond hates Marvel Stadium, and I originally had Richmond, but I'm going to tip the Saints, because for some weird reason, Richmond hates Marvel Stadium. They get 2 games in a row. I'm going to tip the Saints. I'm confident in neither of these teams.
You are bang on with that prediction. I couldn't agree more. I do not see either of the teams getting off the chain and just winning this on their own back. I think it all comes down to who doesn't turn up. This is the kind of game this one's going to be. Only purely because of the trashing that Richmond got. And Cochin's now declared his retirement. I think there's going to be a bit of more emotion from Richmond than anything else. So I'm going to say Richmond, but I'm not confident with it. So I also want Richmond to win because of the implication it does to the ladder. So there's a bit of heart in here more so than the head. So let's go with Richmond.
All right, yeah, you know what? I'll tip Richmond. I'll tip with this one. This one. Hey, the games haven't started yet, so it's not locked. So, all right. Last but not least, this one's fun. Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide v GWS at the Adelaide Oval. I'm tipping the upset. I like the Giants in this one. Port Adelaide still has some injuries. I don't think many of them are coming back. I think the Giants just literally got beat by a little bit of a better team on the day. I still like the Giants' mojo. I still think there's a lot of confidence in the western part of Sydney. I'm going to tip the Giants in this one in an upset.
I want the Giants to win. I think they got the team to do it. I just don't think they have the personnel quite and their style of football. They're missing out on Brent Daniels and Toby Bedford, pressure guys, like really good pressure guys. If you can't pressure Port Adelaide, if they have some time to use it, they got some silky players to use it. They also get back Aaliyah, Finlayson, Lockie Jones, and Narco's going to make his way back in. So like they got some sweet players coming in, as opposed to the Giants losing a couple of key pressure players on their side. So I'm going to go with Port Adelaide for that reason. Less so than the place, but I'm going to go with Port Adelaide.
I'm still going to tip GWS just because I think I still think it's a possibility, even with some of those ends. Port just, there's something off with them. They got a lug nut loose on their back wheel right now, and they're kind of lumping around. So it'll be interesting to see how they go. So that is all 9 games in this round. It's been crazy. A few scheduled changes has really thrown this off. So I know this is coming out late. So most likely you could be watching this after a couple of games are over. So I appreciate you giving a watch. Chris, again, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. Truly, truly appreciate it.
Love it, mate. Love your stuff. Keep it up. And I look forward to the next time.
Fantastic. That's going to do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposals. Again, keep an eye out. More things coming. State League coverage, AFL and AFLW still to come. We will see you again with another episode of Donnie's Disposal.
Here's the siren.